our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that.
My goal in this deposition was to be truthful, but not particularly helpful.
Welcome to UnSpun, the podcast that makes you better at finding the truth. The way people get news is changing. It used to be that there were many reporters who would research stories and write articles, but now politicians and famous people share information directly with you on social media and the internet. That means you find out things fast, but it's up to you to make sure the information's actually accurate. And newsmakers don't always do their part. The temptation to manipulate information is strong. They bend the truth to deceive so that they can avoid accountability, so that they can advance their agendas. When you recognize these agendas, you can sometimes find out what's real. And we're at a crossroads where anyone can share anything online, so it's important to sharpen your critical thinking skills. Finding that deception before it goes viral is pretty much a survival skill now, and we're going to do it together. Let's get unspun. Hello, truth seekers, and welcome to this week's Unspun. In this episode, we're going to learn about a psychological principle that can help explain how people do or don't choose to interact with others, the media, and even the government. If you've ever wondered, why do people act like that? This is the episode for you. Sound good? Great. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that I've mostly moved to sunnier skies, getting away from Twitter to the Blue Sky app. I have the same username there, at DrSturg, or @DrSturg, and we're getting a nice little community together there. So I hope you come by and say hi. Bonus points if you tell me you're a listener. Okay, let's get unspun. So imagine yourself online and a pop-up demands that you download an app right now. What's your reaction? You might just close the window right away. You might even avoid that app completely. But this isn't necessarily just random annoyance. It can be a way that humans naturally resist feeling controlled. Psychologists have a concept they call reactance, and it's a key human response that happens when we feel like our personal choices are being restricted somehow. It was developed by a psychologist named Jack Brame in 1966, and the idea explains why people push back when someone tries to tell them what to do, sometimes even making choices that are bad for them. Here's a modern example. That was a clip from a song called Don't Tell Me How to Live by a musician with the performing name Kid Rock, and the singing here is actually by an artist named Monster Truck. The song has quite a bit of profanity in it, so I'm not going to play a longer clip, but essentially it is about rejecting threats to freedom. At one point, the lyrics veer into free speech, for example, saying, quote, "Every opinion has a millennial offended. With this Amendment 1, it rings true. And if you don't dissent, bitch, then see number 2. So let's look at how this works, especially in how we use media and take part in public life. At its heart, reactance has 4 main parts: feeling free, sensing a threat to that freedom, feeling motivated to fight back, and trying to restore your freedom. So first, feeling free means knowing that you have choices. Take Sarah. She's been messing with this whole family Christmas thing for years. Every holiday, her family gatherings turn into this total political battleground. Her parents are super conservative. Her siblings are pretty liberal. And Sarah, she just wants to drink her eggnog. She doesn't want to moderate World War III breaking out at the dinner table. So this year, she finally decided it's enough. Instead of dreading the invitation or just avoiding it altogether, she made a real choice. Called her mom, laid out a plan. Look, she said, I'll come, but we're not doing the political argument thing this year. She was basically saying this is my holiday too, and I get to decide how it goes. And it wasn't about avoiding her family or ducking tough conversations. It was about setting her own rules, knowing that she had freedom. She could show up, love her family, but still protect her own peace. In media and civic life, this can be what freedom looks like, right? It's picking a news source, it's choosing how to vote, or, even just deciding how to handle a tricky family dinner. But the key is believing you've actually got options and that you're the charge of your own choices. Now, a threat to freedom happens when something happens to limit those choices. So imagine you're Jake, right, a graphic designer who normally rolls his eyes at online surveys, but one night he's trying to look up some new design software and he's looking for reviews. He stumbles onto a tech review site and suddenly a survey pops up. And it's not just any survey, it's got all these little red asterisks everywhere demanding that he answer every single question before he can just read the review he was looking for. And the first few questions seem okay, basic stuff about his job and his design experience, but then it starts getting weird. They're asking about his income, his personal design challenges, questions that just feel way too personal. Jake starts feeling that creepy, skin-crawly sensation of I'm just trapped. Can't read the review he wants. He's got to spill all these details about his professional life first. And here's the thing. The more the survey pushes, the more Jake wants to bail. He starts thinking, who are all these people who want this information? He knows the review he wants is right there, just waiting, but now it feels like it's a power game, right? The site is basically saying, answer everything or you can't have it. And in our online world, this happens all the time. Think about online surveys that make you answer every question, or pushy manipulative political ads, or social media that just limits what you can see. It's like digital gatekeepers are constantly trying to funnel you into their preferred path, and they totally ignore the idea that you could have your own choices about what you want to do. So what would Jake do? He'd probably close the tab. And when these threats pop up, reactance creates that uneasy feeling. Your brain essentially says, hey, I'm being told what to do, and I don't like it. The more important the freedom feels to you, the stronger your reaction's going to be. And when something threatens your freedom, you get motivated to fight back. I mean, really motivated. Take Rachel, a high school history teacher who's been teaching the same lesson plans for years. Last fall, her school district drops this massive curriculum mandate, and suddenly they're telling her exactly what to teach, word for word, no room for her own teaching style or for student discussions. And Rachel is really furious. These new guidelines take away everything she loves about teaching. Her chance to dive deep into historical conversations, to let students explore different perspectives. And the more the district tries to control her classroom, the more fired up she gets. She starts small at first, adding her own commentary to the materials they give her, finding clever ways to bring in extra sources that weren't on the approved list. But Rachel doesn't stop there. She connects with other teachers in the district, and they start a private group chat, sharing strategies about how to maintain their autonomy. So here, they're not just complaining, they're actually planning how they're going to fight back. Some people start documenting how the rigid curriculum actually hurts the student engagement, and others collect data showing how their more flexible approach leads to better outcomes. And by the end of the semester, Rachel and her colleagues have built a comprehensive case against the new curriculum. So they're not just resisting, they're building a strategic response that shows exactly why their teaching approach matters. It's like they've turned the district's attempt to control them into fuel for real change. And this is motivation to restore freedom in action, not just getting mad, but getting strategic. So these hypothetical examples aside, reactance can also help explain some real-life behaviors. Social media blocking is basically psychological reactance in action. Think about the last time someone posted something that made you uncomfortable or angry. The instant you reached for that block button, you're sending a crystal clear message. I control my digital space, and you're not part of it. And it's not just about avoiding conflict, it's about reasserting your personal boundaries in a digital world where sometimes people's communication can feel invasive. Imagine you're scrolling through your feed and suddenly there's a post that it feels like it directly challenges everything you believe. Might be a political comment, a controversial take on a topic, or maybe someone who's just intentionally trolling you. Your immediate reaction isn't to engage or to debate, it's to cut them off completely. Because by blocking, you're not just avoiding an argument, you're also, choosing that freedom, right? You're choosing your own digital experience, protecting your mental space, and signaling that you get to decide who influences your thinking. But here's the tricky part, and this is where things start to get really interesting. When we block people who disagree with us, we start creating these super narrow digital media worlds where we only hear voices that sound exactly like our own. We've talked about filter bubbles before. They're comfortable, but they're basically echo chambers that reinforce your existing beliefs. So maybe your social media feed now comes filled with people who think just like you, who share your views and validate your perspective. And that sounds nice, right? But it's actually kind of bad for you. You're no longer exposed to different viewpoints and you're not challenged or growing. These filter bubbles can also make us more extreme in our thinking. Without hearing different perspectives, we start believing our view is the only reasonable one. We maybe think it's more popular than it actually is, and we become less tolerant, less able to have nuanced conversations, and more likely to see people with different views as total enemies instead of fellow humans with, their own complex existences. So while blocking feels like an act of personal freedom, and in the moment it totally is, it actually becomes a form of self-imposed limitation. We're controlling our digital space, but we're shrinking our understanding of the world in the process. And that is the risk of reactance. Reactance can cause you to actually make choices that are bad for you in the name of preserving sort of your right to choose in the future. I feel like the COVID-19 pandemic cracked open something kind of very raw about human nature. People's deep, almost instinctive response to feeling controlled. Before the virus hit, most people moved through life assuming their personal freedom was a given. They could go where they wanted, they could associate with who they wanted. Choices felt easy, where I'm going to go, who I'm going to see, how I'm going to live. And then everything changed, right? Suddenly, these kind of invisible walls dropped around people's lives, and there were lockdowns and mask mandates and social distancing in the store, and it changed your daily existence into just a minefield of restrictions. It wasn't just about a virus. It was about feeling like someone else was making all your choices for you. And different groups experienced this threat differently according to research. Young people saw restrictions as a direct assault on their social world. Business owners often felt really handicapped as they just sort of watched their opportunity to make a living evaporate. Different political tribes interpreted these guidelines through their own ideological lens, and it turned public health into a battleground of cultural warfare. That resistance wasn't rational. It was emotional. People weren't just fighting a virus. They were fighting for a sense of control. And so you saw people who refused masks, which would help keep them safe, as a symbolic act of defiance. Other people hosted secret gatherings, even prominent people like the Prime Minister of England, transforming private spaces into statements of personal autonomy. And the more forcefully authorities tried to control their behavior, in some cases arresting pastors for holding church services, for example, the more creative people became in pushing back. Language was really important. Messages that sounded like commands, you have to wear a mask, triggered instant rebellion. But communication that emphasized personal choice and protecting the community kind of made different responses. So it wasn't about the content of the rules, it was about how you presented it to people. Political affiliation actually became a powerful predictor of behavior. Conservative communities often framed the restrictions as government overreach, while liberal groups initially complied but grew frustrated with prolonged limitations. Younger populations consistently showed the strongest pushback, viewing each restriction as a personal challenge. What emerged wasn't a simple story of compliance or rebellion, but it was a complex dance of human psychology. People weren't just responding to a health crisis, they were actively reasserting their sense of agency. And regional differences also emerged. So there were areas with stronger individualistic traditions that showed more resistance compared to communities with more collectivist orientations. In the United States, personal choice became a battleground, but in some East Asian countries, which were more communal to begin with, community protection felt more natural. So really, the pandemic illustrated reactance really well. When people feel like their choices are being eliminated, they'll fight to prove they still have control, even if that means that they're making bad decisions for themselves in other ways. So the disagreement wasn't about the specific health measures, it was about something deeper, the fundamental need to believe we're the authors of our own lives. And so in the end, the virus did more than challenge public health. It also exposed the complex and really sometimes irrational ways humans respond when they feel their freedom is threatened. If you tell people they have no choice, they'll always find a way to prove you wrong. Knowing about reactance can help us to make smarter choices about the media and how we consume it. It lets us think about when we're really disagreeing with something or when we're just pushing back because we feel controlled. And that's a whole different kind of freedom for us. Thanks for joining me this week. Thanks for getting Unspun with me this week. Unspun is a production of me, Amanda Sturgill, and is a proud member of the MSW Media family of podcasts. Send me your thoughts and ideas about trickery in the news on Gmail at TheUnspunPodcast@gmail.com. I even write back. And find this episode's show notes and more information at TheUnspunPodcast.substack.com. Want to learn more and get smarter? Check out my book, Detecting Deception, Tools to Fight Fake News, which is available on Amazon or your favorite online bookseller. And until next time, stay sharp, everyone.